All right, after a brief delay while I was out on Twitter doing announcements, I think we're ready. Can everybody hear me? I'm a little bit raspy. I've been fighting off a nasty cold over the past little while, so I won't sound exactly like myself, but hopefully you folks can hear me. Just give me a little heads up there in the chat. Ah, fantastic. Fantastic. So, if this is your first time with one of my live streams, I'll be up front. I tend to lapse into silence. So hit the chat, and if you have any questions or if you have any thoughts or if there's something that you'd like to talk about, hit the chat and let me know what those things are. Otherwise, I'll just kind of go off into my own little world and just kind of be silent. Josh, you got me with that one. Oh, it's no fair. That got me. Brad, let's stream comics. We're still working on getting a dual streaming thing going on. In fact, my assistant just told me today that she successfully did it herself just recently. So at some point, today is not the day, but at some point we will, Dave and I we'll do a couple streaming duos. So we'll stream at the same time. Hopefully we can pull that off. Let's see who's all here. Nathaniel, D, Caleb, Kayan, very good. Oh, yeah, well, listen, you're going to hear a lot of nostril today. I am clogged up, buddy. And Josh is here. Welcome to everybody. Yeah, and like I said, if you have any topics you want to pitch or anything you'd like me to talk about or anything that's on your mind, just let me know. I don't know how many of you are Comic Lab backers, but the punchline to today's comic was actually the result of one of the writers' room shows that we did exclusively for our Patreon backers. But I don't think the show has gone up yet. Maybe next week, because we had to bump. I had a pro tips episode where we talked about the Patreon tier change. and I wanted to make sure that that got out in time for people. Yeah, yeah. You know what? So as I was doing not safe for work stuff, I started following more artists that were doing similar work, and Dson was one of them. And I really got to like that person's style, and just the person was also just very, interesting on social media. So I reached out, and it's just, I don't know whether it's I don't know whether to say he or she, because I don't know Dson well enough. But Dson also has something that I've been trying to build myself, which is not only does he do NSFW on Patreon, but he's got a website set up for it. And that's something I've been trying to move towards for the last year. And it's just has been way more complicated than I ever gave it credit for. I actually have a site ready to go. I am hesitating to pull the switch on it because I'm not sure whether it's going to function in the real world yet. So I'm kind of jealous of Dson for that reason. But yeah, I like the idea of building out that way, and the quality of the work is super, super solid too. So I was thrilled. It's been very interesting because I found out really quick that doing these contents exchanges are super, super powerful. I always pick up a few new backers, and the person that I'm exchanging content with always picks up a few backers. And sometimes, when we hit the intersection of audience just right, it turns out to be a big jump for both. But it is such a hard sell to it, because I don't think I don't think a lot of people I don't think they understand the value of this type of marketing. And so I've got requests out to a bunch of people that that I'd love to do content exchanges with, and they haven't responded. And I get the feeling that they think it's like a scam or a come on or something. And I'm excited anytime I can get somebody on board for it, because I like to give my backers a little something extra, like something that I'm not outwardly promising, and something that frankly I can't promise on a regular basis. Like, we've had 2 bonus rewards in the past 2 months. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't have anything lined up for next month. That's not to say that it couldn't happen, but I've got a lot of these situations, I've got to talk the person into it and then talk them through it. In other words, I've got to say, okay, now here's what we're going to do. On Tuesday, I'm going to upload this to my backers, and I'm going to hit it hard from my website. And then you're going to do the same. And then we're going to cross post each other on social media. We're going to support each other's outreach, yada, yada, yada. And a lot of times I've got to kind of take them by the hand. Not in this particular case. Dson's been doing a great job of promoting from their side. But But yeah, it's been a lot harder than I would like to believe possible in getting people to jump on board this sort of thing. And really, it's just a variation of the old link swap that we used to do back in the day in old style comics. It's just a link swap. Before social media, we did this shit all the time to try to build audience. We'd see, oh, this guy's got an audience that they built, and I've got an audience that I've built, and I can expose some of my people to them, and they can expose their people to me, and everybody succeeds. It's a good system. And social media came along, we didn't need it anymore. So we stopped doing it. And Patreon comes along, and I'm looking at it, I'm going, oh, I know what I can do. And get another reward out of it. Because frankly, if you're like me and you're building this thing on exclusive content and $10 reward levels, it becomes very, very important to make sure that you're keeping your patrons very happy. And nobody likes, nothing breeds happiness like getting free stuff. And that's what this reward exchange is all about. Everybody's given their backers free stuff that they weren't expecting. And as a result, all the backers are happy. I'm happy. It literally is a win-win. Yep, I agree, Josh. I learn a lot of names through DSON, and there's another person that I'm following on Patreon. I'm not gonna. Oh, I bet you. All I got to do, because he retweets like crazy. Yep. I'll pass it along. Only because he retweets my stuff like significantly, and he retweets a lot of stuff. This person totally gets. I don't know that he's ever heard the show, but he's a great example of curation. When I talk about the 3 C's, he curates a lot of other people's stuff, and it's very not safe for work. So don't go there unless you know what you're getting into. But it is, his Twitter tag is Ero Sanpai, EROSANPEI. And I learn about a lot of artists through this person. And so I just kind of keep a running list, and then send out either DMs or emails if I can find an email address, send out contacts and say, okay, here's what a content exchange is. Here's why we should do it. Let's deal. And about half of them ignore me completely. All right, and the other thing is being completely realistic. They just might take one look at my work and say, nah, it's not a good fit for my audience. That's fair. They've got to curate their stuff for their audience. That I don't fault anybody for that. And not all work is right for all audiences. And I don't know their audience. They do. So that would be a perfectly reasonable explanation for why some of them aren't getting back in touch. Hopefully that's a small percent, but it's a possibility. Yep, Josh, I do the same thing. I go on Graftreon, and I see who's close. It's harder and harder because a lot of people are hiding their numbers, and it makes it hard to really know where everybody stands. But I've done the same thing. I'm like, all right, we're kind of in the same area here. Maybe they'll be interested in a content exchange. Do the same thing. I'm really liking the writers' room segments. Thank you. We like them too. Although, as you might imagine, so here's what happens. We get done doing an episode of Comic Lab, and it's really a pretty high energy show. I don't think people, I don't realize how good our show is until I listen to like other shows, and it's like, oh man, this is hot death. But Dave and I really put a lot of energy into a podcast. We're on. When that microphone goes on, we are really giving 110%. As a result, it takes us about an hour and a half to record the show. Then, while we're in the same place, we've got to record the Patreon extra, which is usually pro tips. Pro tips is relatively easy to do because you can always come up with a tip. Like a lot of times I'll go through stuff that I've written for webcomics.com and I'll expound on that. I'll find a topic that's worth going into in greater detail, or I'll pull out something from the webcomics handbook, or pull out something even from how to make webcomics. And you can always find a little something to talk about. Writer's room requires an awful lot of brain power because you're literally now you've gone from being 100% on in a podcast. Now you're writing a comic. Now you're brainstorming, and that takes an incredible amount of focus and mental energy. And we're loving the writer's room. We're loving how your response has been to it. But we haven't been able to do them like back to back very consistently. There's at least one more, I think, in the can coming up. But I don't know that we're going to be able to do them like every week. I think we're going to have to end up going back and forth between writer's room and pro tips. Because writer's room is a really difficult show to do. It's surprisingly hard, but it was such a great idea because I was like, oh, he was like, do you want to do pro tips? And I'm like, yeah, we'll do pro tips because it was like on a day that I had a lot of stuff happening through the week. He goes, well, okay, we got to record pro tips next. I'm like, oh, well, here's the thing. I got to write something for my strip or else I'm going to be behind the 8 ball. So if we're going to do pro tips, we got to do it quick. And we kind of came to this realization that we could make a show out of the writing process and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And it's been great in that respect. But wow, is it draining? So I'm glad you're liking it. I don't want to raise false hopes that it's going to be like a weekly thing, but it's probably going to turn into like 3 pro tips and then a writer's room, and then 3 pro tips and then a writer's room. The way things are shaken out, that's kind of where I'm thinking it's going to head. Also, just as a heads up, for those of you who are Comic Lab backers and like the show, I'll be traveling out to Los Angeles for the NCS festival, where I'm going to be hanging out with Dave at his studio. We'll be doing the show. We'll be doing the NCS show, that is the comic convention type deal. We'll be doing that show, and then I'm staying over for a few extra days and working out of his studio. all of which to say is if you like Comic Lab, if you like hearing me and Dave screw around and talk shop, I can guarantee you between May 17th and May 22nd, there is going to be an awful lot of pop-up live streaming going on based out of the Pacific time zone. So I can't tell you when we're going to do it because I have no idea what's going to go on once I get there. But I guarantee that we're going to do quite a bit of live streaming once we're up there in Los Angeles together. So that would be worth making sure you're following both of us on Twitter, following the Comic Lab podcast Twitter, all that stuff, just so you make sure that you're not missing any announcements if you want to take part in that stuff. Because it'll Dave and I only get a chance to hang out together once or twice a year. And when we do, we try to make the most of it. And so we'll probably be doing a lot of live streaming. Definitely be recording a live show or two. The panel discussion we'll be having at NCS Fest. We're gonna try very hard to make that a live recording. We got a lot of good stuff coming up in May, is what I'm trying to tell you. A lot of good stuff. I would love to do a content exchange, but unfortunately, I only have one patron. Well, listen, we all started there. We all started at one. You'll get there. You'll get there. Nathaniel Gold. I recognize that name. You're a Comic Lab backer. Actually, I recognize the banana. Let's see. I'm hoping more will warm up to the swap. I think people are hesitant because of, yeah. I think you're right, Dee. I think people are always hesitant, and they should be. But I don't know. I don't mind people being cautious. I'm always uh, a little bit cringy over how quickly some people can sign on to certain things. you know, like I always roll my eyes when people aren't cautious enough. But this, I don't know. Maybe it's because I totally get it, and I don't know how to make other people get what I get. Like this is a win-win for everybody. You're gonna and unfortunately it plays on the old exposure bit that we've all been trained because of loudmouths like me particularly, because exposure is often used as in place of payment for artists. Well, this is, without sounding facetious, this is the good kind of exposure. You know, this is something that you're actually getting something for this. But it's hard to explain that. It's kind of like you get it or you don't. I got to be honest with you. I always kind of judge the people that push back. It's like, well, okay, you don't understand publishing. That's okay. You'll get there. Ero Sanpei. That is correct. Erosanpei. Kayan, that's correct. Yeah, I follow that person. Uh, this person retweets me like crazy. Uh, and retweets a lot of people that are doing not safe for work art. And so, like, I follow that person mainly so I can get exposed to a whole bunch of other artists that I wouldn't know about otherwise. And that really shows you the power of curation when we're talking about that for the three C's. I mean, I literally, I mean, I'm a Patreon backer of that person's as well because they're also doing very good art, and I just wanted to see more of it and all like that. But I'm telling you, they came on my radar because they were retweeting so much engaging content, and I ended up becoming a Patreon backer. But people equate it with pledge swaps. Yeah, Josh, I bet you're right. Which are worthless. Speaking of travel, my wife's education might be moving us to New York. Are there any noteworthy advantages for indie creators in that region? Well, yeah. I mean, New York is New York. There are tons of advantages to be living in New York. It's the publishing central of the world. Uh, but other than that kind of anecdotal stuff, and the fact that, like, I'm sure you could find an awful lot of cartoonists in that area, like New Yorker cartoonists and so forth. There'd be a lot of networking, in other words, to do in New York. But as far as like pointing you in a direction, I'm not sure I'd be able to. But I'm pretty confident that once you start digging, you'll find a lot because it's New York. What's not to like? Then you'll just be a train ride away from Philly. That's the important thing. That's where the real cartooning stuff happens. I have alpaca shearing at the end of the month. I didn't know you raised alpaca. Back in the day when my wife and I was living in Medina, Ohio. She was a reporter, and she did a story on these people in Medina that had basically, I don't know what they were, like, stock traders or whatever, bigwigs, and they had given it all up to raise alpaca in Medina. And she had done a story, and it actually was a really good life, And so the idea of casting everything aside and becoming alpaca breeders was was a running joke for us for a long time, and it's fascinating to see somebody that's actually maybe made it happen. Is it a full on avocation for you, raising alpaca? I remember these people were like saying it was super lucrative. Plus, you get to say alpaca, which is just a fun word. I have alpaca shearing at the end of the month, but June is when things get busy for me. The movie I've done some comic work for is getting ready to be released. Oh, that's cool. I'd imagine there are at least a few of them who see the quality and quantity of your content and get afraid that their customers might ban. Yeah, well, okay, Caleb, Oh, welcome, Caleb. Did I welcome you already? How long? Okay, you were here earlier, so I did. Yeah, I did welcome you. Good. Well, listen. First of all, that's very complimentary. But secondly, without like patting myself on the back, I don't know whether it's due to the quality and quantity, uh, but I think that fear of, oh my God, if I expose my readers to somebody else, I might lose readers. I might lose Patreon backers if I expose them to somebody else. I get it. I totally get it. And I could totally understand where that might be somebody's decision making. It's fear-based decision making, and I always reject fear-based decision making. Uh, and also, it's like this. I look at what I do on Patreon, and I'm like, listen, I'm doing my level best. I'm doing everything I can. I am proud of what I'm putting out. It's the reason I do those charts and stuff, where I try to be very transparent. And if I'm, I say this is how many Patreon posts I've had this month. This is how many I had last month. That's just out of transparency. And I also want you guys to know that I take this really, really seriously. I'm trying to trying to give you everything I can in as a way of thanking you for being a Patreon backer. But at the end of the day, if I expose you to Nathaniel's work, for example, if I expose you to somebody else's work, and you say, gee, I like that better, and they take off, well, then in a in a Zen sort of way, I never really had that Patreon backer. They were going to leave sooner or later anyway. What I've actually seen happen in real life is that Patreon backer now becomes a Patreon backer to both of us. And they might leave me or leave my Patreon after a little while. And what happens? Because all or a big part of what I do in comics now is exclusive for Patreon. Those people who leave end up coming back. And then they'll leave again. And then they'll come back again. And they realize that they can do that. And that's one way they can mitigate expenses or whatever. I never get upset at somebody leaving my Patreon because my mental attitude has always been, My job is to post content that makes it really hard for you to even consider leaving. But if you leave, you're always welcome to come back. That's the only way to do it, as far as I'm concerned. And running your site as if, oh no, if I expose them to this other person, then I'm going to lose. That's weak sauce. You're not going to lose anybody. Chances are they're going to be so thrilled that you did that, they're going to stick around because, hey, what are you going to offer next month? What are you going to offer the month after that? It makes you more valuable as a Patreon creator. It makes you more compelling. But as you're pointing out, Caleb, I'm sure that some of it is that kind of fear-based stuff that says, oh, if I do that, I'm going to lose my Patreon backers because they're going to like this other guy better. Nah. 9 chances out of 10, they'll add one. Or they'll go back and forth over the course of several months. But leave and never come back? Not likely. And again, if they do, you were going to lose that person anyway. You didn't have that person. If it's that easy for them to make that decision, you were going to lose them anyway. Your job on Patreon, and I believe this with 100%, your job on Patreon is to get somebody there and then to make it impossible for them to want to leave. Has the Comic Lab that talks about Comic Camp up in Juneau, has that one went out yet? I don't think so. We did Jake Parker, and then this recent one was Chris Hellbeck. And so Juneau, Alaska is coming up next. Man, Dave said he had a great time there. I'm really feeling like I missed out by not going. I think I'm going to have to make the trip next year. But he'll be talking about that for almost an entire episode of Comic Lab coming up. I think you mentioned in one of trying to rewrite the punchline. That would be a cool exercise. Yeah, it would. It would. I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to actually do that, but it would be cool. And redraw, for that matter. Like today on Instagram, I posted a single panel comic that I did in 2014 that I don't think hit as hard as it could have, mainly because I don't think I drew it real well. So something like that, where I can just see the execution problems. In fact, the one that the single panel that went up on Instagram was one of the first, uh, it was one of the first digital comics that I did. And I was doing it in Photoshop, and you can see all of these flaws because I didn't know how to use a stylus, and I didn't know how to use Photoshop for drawing, and it's a hot mess. That one I really should consider redrawing. The only problem is that this is such a disposable art form that as soon as I think about doing that for too long, I'm kind of like, I don't know that I want to do that. I don't know that I want to spend a whole lot of time redrawing an old strip. There's all kinds of new stuff to be drawn. Sometimes I'm also of the mind that you let your archives be your archives. In fact, we've got a Comic Lab uh, question about this coming up, but it's a question we've answered a few times before, and we'll get the question, I'm sure, a few times more. And it basically boils down to, should I redraw my old strips? And the answer is no, not unless there's something really egregious going on there. You shouldn't. I don't think. You let your archives be your archives. You concentrate on what's coming up next. Because if you don't, if you go down that road, man, you can be redrawing for the rest of your life instead of doing the new stuff that you should be doing. Oh no, the alpaca industry bottom dropped out. The breeders still do okay, but the Peruvians have flooded the market. Those Peruvians. I'll be damned. Well, I wonder how those people that Carolyn knew are doing. That would be horrible. Though we turn the fiber into yarn and make things with it. Alaska, yeah. Dave said it was just gorgeous, and the people were great. He came back aglow, to say the least. Hey, thanks for hanging out, Nathaniel. Sorry. Enjoy. Hey, Brad, it's me, Mark, enjoying this more than you can know. Hey, Mark, how you doing? I'm glad you're enjoying it, my friend. Dude, I'm loving the current art. Hoping mismatch makes him work for that first date. Yeah, well, you know what? It's kind of important because it's kind of a self-respect issue too. Because immediately a lot of the emails that I started getting when Cap woke up in the hotel was like, wait a minute, this is ridiculous. They've already had sex. Why, why can't they just kind of pick up where they left off? And it's like, well, no, they don't. They don't get to do that. Cap has already kind of indicated that he's going to have a hard time accepting Miss Match for who she is. She has already seen this. Uh, he just and I think I did a good job of having her verbalize this, but he just can't show up now and think that everything's okay. They've literally got to prove to themselves and to each other that they can do the simple things involved in dating before they can actually start to piece this relationship back together again. So for mismatch, it's also a question of self-respect. She just can't let him bounce in there and jump in bed. I've only redrawn one old art thing. Early on in my comics, I had this stylistic choice of sometimes not drawing character noses, but I had 100 people point out, you forgot their nose. I know, I hate those people. I do the same thing sometimes with mouths. If somebody didn't, in the old Greystone Inn, it worked a lot. But like if I did it today like this, well, you understand what it means not to have a mouth. If I just if I forgot to draw a character's mouth in this comic, it would be noticeable. But Greystone Inn was much more abstract. So if somebody had a completely neutral expression, I just wouldn't draw their mouth to indicate a neutral expression. And I always heard from one Yutz or another, oh, you forgot to draw something. Do I really look like I forget to draw something? I mean, I'm pretty well conscious for almost all of the drawing process. I lapse into comas very rarely at the drawing board. I don't know that I forget to draw anything. It's a choice. And it's not a honestly, Josh, it's not a particularly challenging choice. You know what I mean? I think we're gonna, man, I'm gonna like spoil a whole bunch of comic labs. Dave and I have this really great conversation coming up where the upshot is don't write your comic for your dumbest readers. Don't don't let don't let the don't let the people who have a hard time following simple things bring you down or let you bring down the overall quality of your comic. You can't draw a comic for those people. If you thought it was a valid stylistic choice to not draw the nose, that's fine. I'm ready to sign off on that. But I do understand that at some point it's like, you know what? It's just easy to do this in such a way that I'm not going to have to field those emails anymore. I'll just draw the nose. But you can't let I don't get it and emails like that play too much of a role in your decision making. We spend an entire segment just talking about that. Just like, especially in comedy. Anytime you write comedy, you've got to expect that your reader's bringing a certain amount to the table, a certain amount of intelligence, a certain amount of intuitiveness, a certain amount of curiosity. You can't let every I don't get it talk you into believing that you're not good. But at the same time, you cannot ignore an I don't get it, because that means that there is something there that's missing. At the end, it's a shared failure. It's like jumping over a canyon. The further the canyon, the funnier the joke. But you've got to do everything you can to get them off their edge of the canyon and to put them into flight. Then it's up to them to complete it and to land on the other side. And I don't get it comes when both of those things don't happen. You didn't give them enough power to get off the cliff, and they didn't maybe bring whatever they needed to bring to make, to stick the landing on the other side. And becoming a better humor writer means gauging your successfulness in both of those. Dude, that's the main reason I turned comments off Evil Inc. is because I don't get it and stuff like that were driving me nuts, and it reflected badly on me. I'm like, this, and my writing improved dramatically after that because I didn't have that stuff in my head. See, I can go back in the archives and I can show you when that stuff was really playing on my mind, because all of a sudden my writing got really weak and toothless and really tepid because, again, I think of it as going over the cliff. You've got another choice there, and that is to make it a shorter cliff or a shorter ravine to jump across, right? The only thing is, short jumps, short ravines aren't funny. It's a little funny, but they're just not very funny. The real funny happens when you jump a long cliff successfully. And there's an entire patch of time when I was just trying to write jokes that were basically short jumps that anybody could get. And it certainly cut down on the I don't get it, but it wasn't writing that I was proud of at all. Ready to stock up on more lemonade. D, I know that's a callback to something, and I'm blanking on what it is, but I'm with you. I call it the great nosening. When I go back and do noses on 150 pages, good freaking Lord, Josh. Don't get me wrong, I'm shipping these too hard, but I seriously wanted a head swap cap. Listen, we all want a head swap cap at some point. The guy's a nut. You aren't really shipping them if in canon they were married and I think had a kid. Remember, Kayan, I gotta always say this from time to time. That's not canon anymore. That whole reality got wiped out. That doesn't exist. They were never married. They never had a kid. This is a completely new universe. Not to mention, we also can't forget that Mismatch isn't the only villain that Cap has thwarted. Yeah, and I love that term for sex too. Thwart is a perfect word for the nasty. I think the change from 4-panel strips to half-page Evil Inc. and full-page Evil Inc. After Dark allowed for more of a build-up to the punchlines as well. Oh, yeah, and I threw out my back. Yeah, you're right, Dee. I threw out my back, bringing lemonade in for my evil assistant. Hi! Who's over there working her little heart out. Today is the last day of her internship. She'll never see me again. Till tomorrow. But yes, I had to stack up on more lemonade. Yeah, well, okay, so yeah, going back to that 4-panel thing, one of the big conversations in Comic Lab has been about the 4-panel strip. And something that I've been saying that I really believe is that the 4-panel comic strip was kind of a newspaper device. It was very important for newspapers. And it's great. I think you can do amazing things with a 4-panel strip. I love 4-panel strips, but today's publishing, you can take advantage of so many more possibilities in your comic publishing that there's not really a need to do a 4-panel strip anymore. 4-panel strips were great when we were trying to do daily content. And that was important when we were running ad money. So that's why in the early days of webcomics, you saw 4-panel strips because we were mimicking newspaper publishing very closely back then. It was virtually the same sort of setup. Newspaper publishing and web publishing in the early 2000s were very similar in that they were both predominantly ad-based. We used to call them free websites. We used to tell people about free webcomics and this and that, but they were never free. That was bullshit. It wasn't bullshit. It was good marketing because, everybody loves something that's free. So we told them it was free. It was never free. It was ad driven. We were making money on ads that appeared on the site. Us telling people that those sites were free worked very good in generating audiences back then. It caused a whole lot of problems later on because that whole concept of free breeds entitlements and all of this other stuff that ended up biting us in the ass. But that's a whole nother hour-long conversation. But we built these free sites that were actually ad-driven sites, and that's how the early days of webcomics began. Well, great. If you're going to do that, then the newspaper method of doing a 4-panel strip is very powerful because I can do a 4-panel strip every day. And I can even do a 4-panel strip that incorporates a storyline. Okay? Because back then, people were foraging for content. They were actively looking for content. And once they found content, they would bookmark it or put it into an RSS feed, and they would come back to it every day. And you could be guaranteed that once they jumped in, they were going to keep jumping because they wanted content for their computers, and they didn't have it. So once they found it, they glommed onto it. It was like, oh man, I found this website. It updates every day. It's got a story that I can follow. This is great. And we made a great deal of money and audience out of that back in the day. All right, it's a great way to do things. Now the market is completely different. Now people on the internet are not foragers. Now people on the internet are basically sitting right up to an all-you-can-eat buffet. It's a very different situation. And they're not looking for food. They're not looking for content. Content is just traveling past them on a constantly flowing stream all day long, every time they pick up their devices. They're not foraging for shit. They're being inundated with content. Between that and the breakdown of the ad system, there's not the benefits of having a 4-panel strip are much lower than they would have been before. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't do a 4-panel strip? No, heck, if you want to do a 4-panel strip, do a 4-panel strip. But does that mean that your chances of success are going to be held up a little bit? That you're going to have a harder time building a successful comic as a 4-panel strip that is storyline driven? That's the other part of this we can't forget. I'm not talking about a 4-panel strip that's just a gag every day and there's no storyline. I'm talking about a 4-panel strip that builds a storyline in, and you've got to understand the storyline to understand what's going on in the strip. And so you've got to be a regular reader. Something that was very possible in 2001 that is nearly impossible today because of the way reading habits are on the web. You could do a 4-panel storyline strip on the web today, and you could do it so that artfully it is a wonderful strip. You're going to have a lot harder time gaining traction with that because reading habits on the web today just don't favor that. And if you wanted to do a storyline, there are so many better ways to do a storyline in today's publishing climate. You could do like I do, like half-page updates or full-page updates. There's a lot of different things that were impossible back then that are taken for granted today, ebooks and stuff like that. There's a lot of publishing options such that the 4-panel strip, while it's still wonderful and has a lot of good qualities, for a storyline format, for somebody who's trying to tell a story on today's web, a 4-panel comic is just not the best way to go. And I know that angers some people who want to believe that, you know, everything's the same as it was and time doesn't change and all like that. But it just is. Doesn't mean that 4-panel strips are bad. Doesn't mean that you couldn't do good art. You couldn't do something that is positive and wonderful with a 4-panel strip. Doesn't mean any of those things. What it does mean is in today's web, you are going to have an uphill climb building an audience. And if that's going to be the case, why wouldn't you use the tools that you have in publishing to make use of a different format that's going to help you reach a wider audience. So yeah, Caleb, when you say that change from 4-panel strips to larger updates, my writing took a huge leap forward when that happened. When I finally realized that I could do that, my writing took a huge leap forward. I have to admit, as I admitted I was a fan of Evil Inc. before the end darkening, as I call it, as I'm a superhero nerd at my heart, I'm running a superhero tabletop game set in a similar universe. And I'm not afraid to admit a few of your characters have made cameos. That's Mark, go to drivethrurpg.com. You'll find a bunch of Evil Inc. source books for doing exactly that. They are, I was informed to make them agnostic, I think was the word. In other words, they don't follow like D&D rules or Pathfinder rules. They're kind of vague, but they're there to help you put Evil Inc. characters into RPGs. So go to I think that's called Drive Through RPG, and they're just ebooks. They're like $1 or $2. But I'm thrilled to hear that. And whether you download the source books or not, any chance you get to put them into your game makes me happy. That just means that I'm doing a good job of writing characters that are connecting with you. The Comic Lab episode with Chris Halbach was really good. So much good information on Instagram. I had to listen to it again. Yeah, well, listen, Chris, as we mentioned later in the show, Chris was trying to get all of us to go onto Instagram very early. And many of us, me included, kind of ignored him. We were kind of like, Instagram where people are taking pictures of their food? Are you serious? What does that have to do with comics? In our defense, it was before Instagram had panel by panel swiping, that you could post multi-image posts and so forth. That it was before even that. So it wasn't great for anybody but a single panel cartoonist, but he was seeing such results that he was really like, you do need to consider this. You do need to think about it. And I avoided doing it for as long as I could because I just could not get my head around it. But Chris was an early adopter to that stuff. He was way out in front of everybody when it comes to Instagram. So anytime I want to talk Instagram, I talk to Chris because he's got a lot of it figured out since the very beginning. I feel like this has become the podcast I listen to while watching Brad draw. That is freaking awesome, dude. I'm using the old Marvel. Oh yeah, I remember that. I used to have that when I was a kid. I borrowed from Pathfinder. Yeah, for a long. One of these days, I got to do an Evil Inc. RPG. Not for a long, long time, mind you, before I have that kind of time and energy. But when I think about just the sheer number of characters that I could draw on, and I've been doing this since 2005. I've got a lot of characters that I could put into an RPG. I'm thinking of hiring a temporary assistant eventually to format my comics for Instagram. Listen, Josh, assistants are bad news. I've got one, and she's a pain in my. Oh, hi. Are you still here? I'm teasing. Listen.
I bring humor.
Yes.
I bring my weird stories, which is also humorous. I'm very funny.
You are weird.
I like the content. I actually act and talk about it.
Let me tell you everything you need to know. Well, I mean, listen, hiring an assistant is dicey because you don't know what you're gonna you don't know what you're gonna get. Not everybody's a good fit. Just telling you a little bit about my assistant. I was just looking at my 3-month or my 1 month. How long have you been here?
I don't know. Late March since the assistant thing. I've been here since January.
You started in March, right? As an assistant, you started in March.
Assistant, yes.
All right. March. So going back to March 5th, when I started keeping track, going back to March 5th, and basically what Kathleen has been doing is she's been running Instagram and some Twitter stuff. All right. Since March 5th, I've got a 4% growth rate on Instagram. And that's just been due to what Kathleen's been doing. It's a really big growth rate. Kathleen's like, is that good or bad? No, that's very good. So yeah, it's been working out so far. Kathleen is honestly a joy. As much as I enjoy teasing her, she has been a boon to work with, and there's just going to be nothing but more stuff coming your way. Like right now, Instagram we're up to what, about 3 posts a day.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 Tales from the Evil Inc. archives. So I'm taking the Evil Inc. old strips and rerunning those on Instagram under Tales of the Evil Inc. archive. That's twice a week. Greystone Inn 6 times a week.
I don't know.
On a panel by panel swipe. The live Evil Inc. strip goes up there, so that's twice a week. We're doing sketches from After Dark. That's almost every day.
And some sketches that you just do with like random posts and stuff like that.
And the single panel comics.
Yeah, those.
That from the archives. So we've got a bunch of single panel stuff that is going to go up. All of which ends up being about 3 posts a day, which is having tremendous effects on engagement. So yeah, I would, if you've got the money, if it works out in your budget, it's been working out really well for me to have an assistant just to process this stuff. And Kathleen, remember, had to kind of learn Photoshop on the fly. Like she was not a Photoshop person walking in the door. So she had to learn this stuff and learn how to process all this stuff, and she's been doing great. So yeah, I would say that's a good idea, Josh. I just hiring somebody as an assistant just to format all those comics for Instagram. Smart. I'm still trying to decide whether I want to have it spread it out to Twitter, since we're doing them. Whether it's smart to format them for Twitter as well. I haven't quite decided yet, but we're early. We might, just as long as you're doing them, just put them out on Twitter too. But yeah, Not a bad idea.
Editing.
Not a bad idea. Yeah, but Kathleen came to me through University of the Arts, and today's actually her last day of her internship. She's helping put together the second edition of the Webcomics Handbook. How far did you get today, Kathleen? Just as long as I have it top of mind here.
Well, that's the thing.
That's the problem.
No, it's not a problem. It's just I finished social media, writing, creativity, and art. And they're all digitally edited.
Good.
And I have my other chapters at home, but I only brought 4 because I thought it was going to take me longer, and they were like pretty big. So I don't have anything else to do for that.
So you're caught up for right now.
Yeah.
Do you want to take off?
Yeah.
Take off. I'll see you tomorrow. How long have you been sitting here not saying anything about being done?
I went to the bathroom and I came back.
Oh, okay. So not long.
And I politely stared at you.
I noticed that. I noticed that. You okay walking to the train station, or do you want to ride?
No, I can walk there.
Okay.
I won't deprive you of talking to internet people.
Well, congratulations on your internship. Let me know when you're showing up tomorrow. Bring load Photoshop on your laptop, because I think that Mac is dead.
Okay.
And then we'll just sign you on to Creative Cloud, and we'll probably have to sign you on to all my stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sounds like a plan. I wanted to say something clever because you're live.
I'm betting they can just barely hear you, if they can hear you at all, because I can't imagine the microphone's that great. Huh?
I would have yelled it. We're very vocal.
That I know. That I know. Well, let me know when you're showing up tomorrow, and we'll hit social media and just keep pushing forward.
Okay. Sounds like a plan.
All right.
Oh.
How many chapters are not done?
All of them except for image prep books and Comic Cons are physically edited. Like I printed them out and they're done. Oh, and business, I didn't do business. So I can just go home and do the rest before I go to work. That's fine.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're in good shape to start working that stuff into chapters then.
Oh hell yeah.
All right, very good. That's a successful internship as far as I'm concerned.
Nice. I'm gonna go buy a bunch of candy. That's gonna make me sick later.
Why are you gonna do something that you know is gonna make you sick?
Because I have a craving and I listen to my taste buds more than my brain. Because my taste buds love me and my brain just tells me what to do, like it's my mom telling me to do my homework.
And what kind of candy are you gonna buy?
I'm gonna buy Reese's Sticks and Skittles and not Sour Patch Kids, but the rope thingies. The Sour Patch.
Oh yeah.
I love those. They're so cool.
My downfall is the Skittles minis.
They're Skittles.
No, not Skittles. What's the other one? Starburst minis.
Oh, I love those, like the little gummy things.
Yeah, I could eat those for a long time, and then I get sick.
I hate regular Starburst.
I don't mind regular Starburst, but I really like the other ones.
Yeah.
All right, my friend. I will see you tomorrow.
All right, later.
See ya.
Put this in my drawer because I get hungry and I get pretzel angry. Brett, it's been a week since I had a soft pretzel.
Oh Jesus! If you don't bring a pretzel in tomorrow, I'm gonna kick you right back out.
Why?
Because that's all you did last week was complain about your goddamn pretzel.
Listen, my love for soft pretzels has become a crutch in my life. I'm trying to detox.
You're a knucklehead.
I have 6 days into my detox, Brad. I need to.
All right, my friend. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Oh yeah, that's my new assistant. She's a knucklehead, but she fits in around here just fine. I like her. But yeah, that's worked out really well. In fact, I'm ready to give her some more responsibilities. The more I can, frankly, pass off on her, the more I can work on comics. And then she wants to work in comics, so she's getting kind of an education, if you will. Oh, and D, I saw your comment about floaters. You can take a look. We got floaters right there. Oh, you can't see them because I'm up in Photoshop on my other screen. But trust me, there's floaters. There's floaters. You don't have to worry a bit. Oh, shitballs. I really should have a background in that one scene, and I don't have one ready to go. And I don't have one on this computer. You're about to see me pull something out of my keister. Let's see. When's the last time I did mismatch in her apartment? It's got to be one of these. Beep, 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 beep. Would you say she's the mall to your Sidious? Maybe. It's one of my goals for the end of the year. I think I'll have to double my patronage for a full timer. Yeah. Well, yeah. And be upfront with what you're willing to pay and stuff like that. You know, I might use my Comic Lab question of the month to get you to fully expand on what kind of roles they could fill. Like, so it all depends. See, Kathleen came in as a writing major from the college. And when she found out that I was hiring, she was like, I want to have a chance at the job. And I don't know how much I can or should go into it, but I had a number of different people who were interested in the job. And I asked each of them, what's your thoughts towards not safe for work content? And I got a whole range of answers from, I think the human body is a beautiful thing, to, I experienced porn once, a lot of hesitant answers. And Kathleen goes, didn't you see the shirt I was wearing the first day I came into your studio? And I said, I guess not. I wasn't paying attention to what you were wearing. And it was a hentai shirt. And she goes, no, this is something I really like. I really have zero problems with it. So she really wanted to work with the content. She had an eagerness to work with the content. Wasn't going to just hold her nose and put up with it. She was eager to work in not safe for work comics, and that once I had that, even though she didn't know Photoshop, I taught her Photoshop, or I taught her what she needs to know, and she took to it like a fish to water, quite frankly. She's got the enthusiasm. Everything else I can work with. I can teach her Photoshop. I can't teach her enthusiasm. So once I realized that that was in play, then I was like, okay, this person's going to be a good fit. And she was. And like I said, she's been doing, in fact, I've got a, let's see. Oh, yeah. For those Patreon backers of me, the Cap and Mismatch wedding commission just went up. So one of my Patreon backers at the $50 level commissioned a wedding scene, which is cool. And I'm just posting. So we use later.com to post, to schedule posts. And the Greystone post that she worked on is ready to go right now. And there it goes. Woof. I'm getting a lot of engagement on this shit. I see. So yeah. So right now so here's what she's doing. And here's what she's doing. She's scheduling a bunch of archive stuff to go up on Instagram. Once we get into a better scheduled routine for Comic Lab, which we fell off of right after the holidays, and we've been kind of we need to build up our buffer again to be able to do this. But she has and will continue to do Comic Lab promotion. So like when people write reviews on iTunes, we've been pulling those and running those on the Comic Lab Twitter feed. She's been responsible for doing all that. She's pulling clips to put out on Comic Lab. She's been doing all the show notes and the podcast chapters. She's doing all of that for Comic Lab, and as she gets a good handle on that, there's a lot of stuff that I'm very, very interested in handing right over to her. As long as she can keep it all straight and continue to get the stuff done. And like I tell her, sometimes she's like, well, should I do this or should I do that? And I'm like, dude, it's social media. It's going to be up for 7 seconds if it's no good. If it's no good, if it doesn't take, it'll be up for 7 seconds. So why worry? As long as you're not saying something, libelous or egregious or something, just use your best judgment. And if it's good, then it's going to go. It'll have its own moments of trendiness, and it'll get carried, and that's what we're aiming for. But if not, it's just there for 7 seconds and it goes away. You really can't take something like that too seriously, So that's kind of my attitude when it comes to social media. I'm like, just put something up. We've got our own little guides, and I do really suggest, if you're going to do this, Josh, I really suggest using later.com specifically to manage Instagram posts, to schedule those, because you can also save hashtags and stuff like that. So there's just a whole bunch of hashtags that we always use that she doesn't have to type in every time. I really do like, and the analytics for later.com gives you for Instagram is way better than the analytics that Instagram themselves offer. So I would suggest that. And then, bring the person in for a trial period and say, okay, we're going to try this out. We're going to see how everything goes. Be upfront about that. If it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And nobody wants to work in a place where it's not a good fit, So be upfront about that. Have a certain period of time where you are trying this out. Now, for Kathleen's case, that was kind of built in because she was here for the internship. So I was kind of like, all right, well, once you're finished doing this chapter, why don't you see if you can learn, show me what you know in Photoshop, or show, I took her and kind of gave her a brief training session, and then let's see if you can do this. Let's see if you can do that. Well, she to her credit, she worked hard on learning all that stuff. And then I said, okay, well, let's keep moving forward. And then taught her how to write an invoice, how to get paid, all of that thing. And it's been good. As a matter of fact, I've got another intern coming in from University of the Arts. She's going to come in starting next week. She's going to come in for an interview. Now, she is more of an artist. She is an artist. She's an illustrator. So I might like somebody like that. I'll bring them in and put them to work. What I'm really thinking about doing is have her just draw a bunch of backgrounds, like different type backgrounds that I can plop into scenes, like I lazily plopped into that scene in the bottom left there, just so it wasn't quite so naked. Yeah, I just might have her come in and just start drawing living rooms and kitchens and spaceship hallways and stuff like that. Just because it's going to be, she works in Clip Studio. I can set her up, let her go on that, show her some stuff about comics publishing. If there's a God in heaven, I'm going to be launching that Kickstarter soon. Part of the problem is I taught my last day at UArts Monday for the semester. And I love teaching. I taught 2 classes back to back for the first time. And it took a big part of my week away. And I love doing it. I love working with the students there. I just have to. I just am looking forward to having my Monday back so I can catch up on stuff. I slowly have been falling behind for the last 3 months. So I'm very much looking forward to having a full week back that I can use again. But yeah, if you can budget for it, now is it worth the amount of money I'm putting into it? I'm not sure yet. It's hard to say. If I gain the kind of Instagram traction that I want to gain, then the answer is going to be yes. And if I can put even more things on her plate as time goes by, then definitely it'll be very much worth it. But I'm a big believer in internships and in assistance, and I've been very fortunate so far to find, the interns that I worked with. I had an intern a couple of years ago that I ended up bringing back in to do a bunch of work on a couple of different projects that I was doing. So a lot of times when I do have an intern, it's kind of like a tryout. And then if things work well, then I set them up with additional projects. But yeah, I always try to find a way to make sure that intern is getting paid. Yeah, even if they're getting college credit, like Kathleen, since she's working on the webcomics handbook, by the time everything settles out, when that Kickstarter funds, she'll get a check written to her for the part that she played in that, even though it was an internship, even though she got college credit for it. It's still important to make sure that you're paying those people. I mean, I get it. Their payment is college credit, and I get that. But if you're in a situation like this, and it's like, no, yeah, okay, I can build that into the Kickstarter, and it's going to be, quite frankly, painless to write that check. Then why would I not write that check? That's silly. So yeah, I would definitely see if you could work something out with the local college or university to get an intern, and then when you're ready to do an assistant, that's something that I've had so far. Have had very, very good luck with. Have you seen Endgame yet? I ask simply to make sure my next questions don't spoil anything. Well, I have. I can't speak. There's only 7 others, and I think I'm one of them. So let's say 6 others. I don't know whether everybody has, and it's still a little. Is there any way you can ask the question in code? Because I really like. So at school, some of the kids in my 7th graders class purposefully spoiled a bunch of plot points for my son, and he came home in tears, because bless his little 13-year-old heart, he had been waiting for this movie all of his life, because I think he was 3 when Iron Man came out. So he's been in his mind waiting for this all of his life, and and to have it spoiled really upset him. Like, he was really, it was a douchey thing to do for these kids. It was, it wasn't great. But I'm very sensitive to spoilers, so I'm gonna say unless you if you can ask the question in code, that would be great. Let's see here. Oh, shuckaroonies. Might as well make this post while I'm at it. I get the sense that things are winding down. Oh, okay. Let's be appreciative of our other conversationalists. I'll say, did you not cheer like a little kid? Okay, well, listen, I cheered like a little kid and ugly cried like a ugly adult several times. Yes. The final battle had me up on the edge of my seat. There were a bunch of scenes, some of which were kind of hokey, some of which were like just cheesy. But of course, you got to remember, the Marvel Universe was built on cheese. It was built on Stan Lee's over-the-top, bodacious storytelling, and a lot of that was cheesy, and it's what made it so good. It was that carefree, throw your hat in the wind kind of storytelling that built that universe. So when there were certain scenes like, it was something along the lines of "We've got her back," that scene. And if you know what I'm talking, either you know what I'm talking about or you don't. But she is with us, or we've got her. That something like that. That scene, cheesy as hell, but was a delightful scene. And as the scene unfolded, you just went, "Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!" Because it was that good of a scene. Hold on, I've gotta think while I type here for a second. Evil Inc. Week of May 7th, 2019. Here's your first look at this week's exclusive full page comic. Another Patreon exclusive. See an Evil Inc. in a full page format. I like exclusives. I stopped posting it full page every place else so I could make that an exclusive. Pink. Publish now. Ba-da-dum. And here's where I find out. Here's where I find out how good I am. If I get a message from a Patreon backer within the first 60 seconds of making a post, it usually means there's a typo. Let's see if I've got a typo. Do you like it? It's my alter ego. No, can't. Oh, you know what's going to happen? Somebody's going to try and tell me that I'm using alter ego and secret identity incorrectly, and they can eat a bag of dicks. No, Captain Heroic is your alter ego. This is your secret identity. I don't have a secret identity. I am Captain Heroic. It's on my birth certificate. Really? Who would name a baby captain? A father named Commander with a tenuous grasp on military rank. Ba-da-ba-ba-da-ba. Yeah, so that was originally a Comic Lab Writers Room topic, because I went even further with it, and Dave's like, "Nah, you're breaking your own rule, Brad." He said, "Your rule is once you hit the punchline, you stop talking," which, by the way, is a rule, unless you got something even funnier to say. And he says the stuff you're following it with isn't funnier. And I didn't have, I only had an idea of what was funnier. What did I come up with? Yeah, we never came up with anything. I knew what it needed to feel like, and we just couldn't come up with anything. He's like, "Nah, just stop it at military ranking." Because he did. I was reading it to him, and he laughed out loud. So I know it was a genuine reaction, because I'm an easy laugh. He's not an easy laugh. He's a hard laugh. He's not an easy laugh. Bookmark. I'm assuming you're talking about later.com, Josh. Yeah, you should bookmark that. It's a subscription. They ding you for a little bit, but it's a tax write-off. You know, it's been worth it for me. Yes, it was an epic movie. Yeah, you know, that's the thing. So speaking about Endgame, without spoilers, that is something that, oh shit, I got a comment already on Patreon. That means I must have a typo. Hold on. Oh, fuck me. Oh, fuck me. Oh, no, the last 3 panels are out of this world. Wow, I love you. I don't know what's so great about those last 3 panels. Hey, Christopher, I love you. But I don't know what's, now I'm like, was he being sarcastic? You know, that's what it's like living inside of his head. I was so upset it was going to be a typo. It was a perfectly nice comment, and now I'm wondering whether it was serious or not. No, those are 3 good panels. Wow, Christopher, you made my day. You made my day. Even if I am fucked up in the head, you made my day. Yeah, he does look innocent without his mask. Well, hold on. Before I get sidetracked, Endgame. 11. So what we saw in Endgame was unequaled in American movie history and will never happen again. It was a one-time thing. You got to get your head around that. What just happened was unique. It's never happened before. and it'll never happen again. Okay? So what happened at Endgame? It was the culmination of 11 years of movie making, 22 movies, all of which intertwined to bring us to this one moment. We've had sequels and trilogies before. This was 22 movies that arguably come together in the Infinity Stones movies, Infinity Stones and Endgame. This Endgame caps all of that off. All of those 22 movies get capped off in Endgame, brings everything to a successful conclusion. That's never happened before on that scale, and it's never going to happen again. That's the bittersweet part of all this, guys. It's never going to happen again because they're going to try, and they will have successful movies after this. Hopefully, at some point, a successful Fantastic Four movie. God, before I'm dead. But they'll have, as Guardians of the Galaxy, they'll have another Black Panther movie. I'm very much looking forward to Sam in the role of Captain America, a movie in which we have a Black Captain America delights me to no end. I think that could be a really great movie. There's a lot of good things that could come of all of this, including extending the Iron Man franchise. But they're not going to be able. There's no way that they could possibly build another 22 years or another 22 movies, or even 10 movies over the next 10 years that culminate in something so big. They're just never going to pull this off again. It's going to be physically, humanly impossible for them to do this again. They just won't be able to. They've hit the top. They shot their load. This is done. They're never going to be able to do it again, which is okay. It's fucking amazing they did it once. Remember, in all of American cinema, nobody's ever done this. It's not a bad thing that they're never going to be able to do it again. So in a previous Comic Lab, you and Dave were down on physical prints. I want to submit a counterpart. That postcard size prints are extremely cost effective on a $20 tier. Okay, now Josh, I got you right there, because what we've said is we're down on physical mailing and Patreon, and I stand by that. Across the board, I'm against that, except in your higher tiers. If you've got people paying at the $20 level, you can afford to send them a postcard. I totally sign off on that. And I think we've said as much on the show, although, when you're doing a show, you're talking, I don't know what I said half the time until I hear it later. But I agree. At your higher tiers, physical rewards can be useful. I ship physical rewards at higher tiers. My $20 level, I ship original art. Now, it's for every 3 pledges because it's original art. But I wouldn't have any problem signing off. I don't even have to read the rest of what you're saying. I wouldn't have any problem signing off on shipping cheap physical stuff at higher reward tiers. Absolutely. I'd be an idiot if I didn't agree with that. And I got to go back to listen to Comic Lab to see what I actually said. Maybe I was an idiot. But I agree with you 100%. For higher reward tiers, you can ship physical rewards. 5x7 envelopes, under 1 ounce in weight, 50 cents to ship, with 1 5x7 postcard, 4x6 print cut in half to make 2 playing card size prints, and a sticker for a total of 4 unique prints per pack. Well, I'm not sure I understand all that, but I think that's just delightful. I don't have any problem with that. 5x7 envelopes. Okay, so it's in 5x7 envelopes with you're putting a postcard inside of an envelope? Isn't the whole point of a postcard is that you don't need an envelope for it? With one 5x7 postcard, one 4x6 print cut in half to make two playing card size prints. Josh, I'm not following you, but whatever you're doing, I think it's great. I think you're doing great. Now, as a pure vampire fanatic, I have to ask, is the only reason we haven't seen Drac and Lightning Lady together that one bite would turn him into a 2,000-volt pile of ash? Well, that's a good question. Are vampires affected by electricity? I don't know whether vampires are affected by it. That's a really good question. I don't think vampires are affected by electricity. Sunlight, yes, but that's not electricity. Aha! It's to keep all the content together. But if you've got one 4x6 print cut in half to make two playing, what the hell is 4x6? If you cut that in half, that's a lot smaller than a goddamn playing card, isn't it? Where's my ruler? 4x6. 4x6. Okay. So that's pretty big. So you cut that in half, so that becomes 4x6. So it becomes two 3x4s, right? No. Yeah, two 3x4s. There's 3, there's 3, there's 4. So it becomes two 3x4s. And that's about the size of a playing card. All right. Got me on a technicality. One 4x6 print cut in half to make two playing card size prints and a sticker for a total of 4 unique prints per pack. A 5x7. I'm just going to have to pledge at the $20 level, Josh. I like your stuff anyway. 5x7 postcard, 4x6 print cut in half, and a sticker. Josh, how many $20 backers do you have that are biting on all this? I don't say that like I want to start a fight. I'm just curious. Is to keep all the content together. Would make a wonderful calendar idea. Dracula, year-long bites of the year. Yeah, Dracula bites everybody, and we see what happens. Print payload. That's a great fucking name. If a train leaves Chicago going 40 miles an hour. 59, Josh. You don't have to ask any questions. You're fucking killing it. Now I got to do something like that. Fuck, Josh. Now I got to figure out how I'm going to do that. Do I want to ship porn through the mail? Not that I guess I do already, but oh man. Let's see. Reach out, co-creators trying to yeah. Prince, huh? Oh God. It's a half day's work to print and package it all. What are you printing this stuff yourself there, Josh? You got like an Epson, do you? Canon Pixma Pro 100 to do the prints, usually on sale on Amazon. Yeah, Josh, that's a great idea. That's fantastic quality. Yeah, but how often are you buying ink? Factor the ink into all that. $59. Oh, you're doing a lot of printing. Unless, are you fitting all those images on one page? One 5x7 and a 4x6 cut in half, and you're printing, no, you're not printing the stickers. You're getting that done someplace else, I would imagine, right? Nope, I print the stickers at home. I have a Silhouette Cameo that cuts them out. Looks like a pro did it. Stickers I print about 10 per sheet. All right, Josh. So 6 sheets satisfies 60 patrons. All right, all right. Now, have you, and I got a feeling because Josh I've met before, he's a smart guy, but I want to know, for my own curiosity, I swear to God, I'm not trying to hang you up here, okay? But when I hear an idea like this, I got to know more about it. What is the outlay in terms of printer ink? Let's take the cost of printer out. Printer ink and the special paper you got to buy to make all of that happen. What's your monthly outlay in making that happen? What are you spending in ink, and what are you spending on paper? Oh, shucks. Paper I buy, so ink is $15 per color, but it's been 4 months and I haven't, well, okay, then that's better than the experience I've had with Epson's. I was not expecting that. At about 6 colors, so ink is 15 per color, 4 months, so 6 colors, 6 times 15, let's see, I got to do my gazintas here. 15 times 2 is 30, times 3 is 9. So about $100 in ink, but it's lost you, $100 in ink, about, rounding up, 90 technically. But 4 months, so let's say 90, let's say that you're going to peter out pretty soon. And we'll call it 90 over the course of a year. That's 3, so 270, about $300 in ink over the course of a year. Paper I buy from Red River, they run specials at about $15 per 100 sheets of metallic paper. Holy Christ. That's the 5x7 postcards. Let's cut to the chase. Have you figured out the unit cost for these yet? And does it still work out? It must be, because you wouldn't be doing it otherwise. The 4x7 is $20 for 50 sheets of glossy photo, but cut in half, yeah, they go a long way. I bet you they do. Yeah, that looks. I'll tell you what. It doesn't look like a bad. Doesn't look like a bad promotion at all. Especially if you've got nearly 60 people. We can just call that 60 people. 60 people at $20. I gotta go. I gotta go do my gazintas again. Oh, that's my calendar. Need my calculator. 60 times 20. That's going to be well over $45. 60 times 20 equals, that's 60 times 20 is a 1200. So even let's say in the first month, let's say he's got 270 in ink. He's still got 930 left over. Now he's got, what do we say, $15 for 100 sheets, still over 900 bucks. And we're only 1 month and we're paying for a year's worth of ink. $20 for 50. Yeah, Josh, there's no way you're losing money on this. This is definitely a stealable idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. Josh, you should write all this down in a step-by-step and submit it as a guest column for webcomics.com is what you should do. That way I can steal it. That really does sound like a great, in all honesty, sounds like a great approach. If you ever do want to do a guest column, I would love to have it. Good stuff. All right, my friends. Well, I need to go home and make dinner for my youngest. I stole it from an artist that focuses yeah, well, listen, this whole gig is about stealing good ideas. We all steal good ideas. All right, my friends. Thank you again for hanging out. This was fun. I don't think we ever got more than 7 or so, but the conversation, when it comes to this, I'm all about, quality over quantity, and the quality of conversation from you folks has been amazing. I really enjoyed talking to you guys and inking while I worked. Oh, look at that. I got a new subscriber. Who would have figured? All right, guys. Yeah, and riddle out the math. Yeah, I love that stuff. I love that stuff. Thanks again, and I will talk to you guys on the next live stream. Thank you for hanging out, Dee and Josh. Oh no, I shouldn't start naming people because I'm going to miss somebody. But Hazidorus and Caleb and Kayan, I know was in here too. Thank you for everybody that hung out. Sarah. Oh, good gosh, Sarah was here. I didn't even get a chance to say hi to her. Thank you for everybody that hang out. That was a good time. This is a good live stream. And I will talk to you guys next time.